in the world of startups, failure is pretty common, I must say. In fact, like failures are actually the ones that shape the foundation of the whole business, especially if you are a founder yourself. But how do you guide the founders that you have mentored over the past years to pivot or persevere when they encounter any challenges that kind of threaten their business survival?
Okay. So basically, there's a few things that are fundamentals that I actually look at. And this is how I approach them. So first things first is that I would definitely want to sit with you and understand what exactly, is the situation like. So what I do is I do a data-driven assessment. So a data-driven data is king after all, right?
It is.
So data-driven assessment means that, I will need to look at, how healthy is your financials at the moment? How did it start? Where you at the moment? Looking at basically the customer feedbacks. If there's any feedbacks that is given that is valuable to understand why this is not working out. Being able to look at the financial metrics. How much exactly did the company spend on X amount for this, and why is there no growth? And then I want to look at your team, whether or not you have the right people with the right skills and the right competencies to be able to, to do their role and to be able to execute what needs to be executed and bring in the revenue and growth, right? I want to be able to look at that. And then then from the assessment onwards is where I will identify and look at the OKRs and the KPIs. You see, there are certain startups or certain organizations, they tend to change OKRs very often, almost every quarter. Oh, this is not working out, let's change it now.
For listeners who don't know what an OKR is, it is?
Objective, key results.
Key results.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. So OKR. So basically, they tend to change it very frequently, which I would never recommend it, because technically it will actually disrupt how your team performs as well. And how is that so is basically, for example, in beginning of the year, every organization, every startup founder, they would have worked with their team already. Okay, guys, these are the OKRs for the year. This is what I want to achieve. This is the focus. This is going to be the goal, right? So the team then works towards that, whereby they work towards, the KPI aspects is all surrounding the OKRs of the organization. And then you go every quarter, you must sit down and you review those OKRs, whether you're meeting it or whether, why you're not meeting it, right? But then if you're going to change your OKRs as time goes by, you got to understand your team is going to drop the current role that they're already working at, and now they have to pick up another OKR because you've already set that there, and now they have to reprioritize the entire thing. So reprioritize this, but you're already in the middle of working something, right? So you got to be able to look at that. So that is number 2, is what I will look at that. And then I will then look at basically the market analysis. So most of the time when a startup is going through challenges, it's because at the end of the day, it could not just be the business alone is going to the challenge. It could be the market is going to the challenge. So for example, like the pandemic happened, it's not that it's one particular business that was going to the challenge. It was pretty much almost the entire, world, right? So every single industry was affected badly at the end of the day. So I would want to evaluate that. I want to look at the market. I want to understand, to be able to really fully understand whether it's the market or not. Because if it's the market, then you got to re-strategize, and I'm able to provide the guidance towards that. But if it's not the market, then if it's the business alone, then I will need to re-strategize accordingly to that. So everything has to be very, very customized. Everything has to be, go in depth in terms of the current situation.
Right, and the current challenges that they are going through that's actually not allowing them to grow.
Exactly. So basically, we look at the risk assessment. So in terms of understanding, now when you want to re-strategize and you want to go towards basically a new strategy, and you want to work towards that. Now what happens is you got to look at the risk assessment, whether or not is this viable, whether or not, is this going to affect in any way, whether or not, there's going to be potential consequences for the decision that you're making. And then I will look at scenario planning, right? So scenario planning basically would help, the founders to basically not just preserve and pivot, but also look at it from a point is whether, how are you going to sustain in 1 year with that new strategy now, and how you're going to sustain in the next 2 years, as per se. Is it going to affect badly? Because that's where it comes towards the testing and experimentation point.
Got it.
So the testing and experimentation point is whereby you got to look at whether, it leans towards a pivot or just a suggestion towards a new direction instead.
Because a pivot is a whole other
Business plan, everything
business plan
change.
changing, right?
Yeah. So it's like me now
interesting.
focusing on HR and business, but maybe I want to re-strategize and go towards market research alone, right? So I'm re-looking at the whole thing because then I feel like, okay, maybe HR and business is not working out anymore. So,
It's a whole monster.
it's a whole monster at the end of the day, right? So I think, the final piece is basically the contingency planning.
Yeah.
That is so important. This is why it's very important that every startups or every business owners, every founders out there, it's important to hire a really good HR, lead. And the reason why I say that is because they need to be able to work on a contingency plan with you. So the HR in every business is actually very crucial. So I've met certain founders where they've hired HR, where where they felt that it was okay to hire HR, although they didn't have the specific skill sets or didn't have that experience to know how to, to be able to adapt towards risk management or to be able to adapt towards when a business needs to pivot or re-strategize, right? In their feedbacks have been given to me before as well, whereby it's okay when the time comes, we will outsource to an external party. But what they don't understand, this is where I feel that a lot of startup founders, entrepreneurs, they don't understand this one thing. The reason how you could have avoided from going to that matter, whereby, re-strategizing and all of that, is you should have focused on hiring the right HR team. And when I say you focus on hiring the right HR team is because, first of all, it is their role to be forecasting for you, to be looking at the strategy, to looking at where the business is heading, whether you have the right skill sets and the right competencies of each of the team members in the organization, right? That's why it's very crucial, like when I say you need to hire the right HR, because at the end of the day, they would be able to help you also avoid from going towards a path whereby your business is going down. And it's very important. I've also always emphasized this to every HR out there when I do mentorship. I've always emphasized this to all the entrepreneurs. Your HR needs to think not from HR aspect only. They need to think from the business aspect. So it's very important that HR adapts and adopts the whole understanding of how businesses work. Not just how HR works, how policies are, how handbook is written, how, what policies we need to, need to implement, what policies we should take away that doesn't make sense anymore, things like that. It is not about that anymore. It is about the business aspect. That's why at the end of the day, say, right, finance and HR are basically the backbone of every organization. It's a support team at the end of the day.
Audio Plus.